bring in Ross Tucker, CBS Westwood One color analyst, host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. He was on the call for the Colts and the Vikings Saturday afternoon. Okay. What are you saying in the broadcast booth while halftime is going on of what you think is going to happen with the Colts and the Vikings?
Well, first of all, Dan, I am thanking the Vikings for a personal delivery of unbelievable food to the broadcast booth, which was amazing, but also a little bit awkward because it's halftime. These people are being so nice to you, and they're losing 33-0. I mean, they're getting embarrassed. So it's like you want to smile and say thank you, but you don't know what to do because they're getting hammered. Honestly, at halftime, I was primarily talking about Jeff Saturday, the unbelievable coaching job he did to get those guys ready to play with nothing to play for. And this could be something that he builds on the last 3 games and maybe gets the head job. And I said for the Vikings, they just need to get the first score. You know, they just need to get the first score. It always starts that way. It sounds like a cliche, but once you get the first score and some positive things happen, the wildest part about the game to me, Dan, is that not everything went their way in the second half. I mean, you're talking about a team that had the greatest comeback in NFL history, and not once but twice they had fumbles returned for touchdowns that the refs blew dead. Or Jefferson has to leave because Gilmore hits him in the head. Rager comes in, stops his route, and Cousins throws a pick. I mean, they probably could have come back from 45 points down if it wasn't for some of the other plays we're talking about.
Ross is joining us from Green Bay, and hopefully your connection will be good. Is it dial-up service there? You're going to be okay?
Am I slow? Oh, that's a bummer. It's Wi-Fi here in the hotel room in lovely Green Bay. I'm on the call tonight with Kevin Harlan. It was good for my podcast this morning. Hopefully it holds tough for you guys.
Just to get you ready for Kevin Harlan tonight, Fritzy, would you give Ross a little Kevin Harlan?
Ross, it's good to have you in the booth. It's a big game tonight at Lambeau Field. Baker Mayfield and Aaron Rodgers, 3-0 lead for the Rams. Will they hold on? There's 13:26 left in the first quarter, and the Rams want to talk about
it. Wait, why? If the Rams are up 3-0 with 13:26 in the first quarter, why do they want to talk about it?
They lined up wrong or something happened.
Yeah, there's an illegal formation there or something. Just let him go.
That's
he
not
was
what
on
Sean
a roll.
Payton wanted.
By the way, Ross, would you like to vote on most valuable Danette?
Oh, geez. That's tough. You know, it's funny, Dan, like one of the first couple of times I filled in for you, I went on Pardon My Take with those guys, and they made me rank the Danettes, which it puts you in a really uncomfortable situation. So I love Seton and Marvin, but I don't have a lot of interaction with them. It's either Paulie reaching out about filling in for you if you're sick or something.
How about just listening to the show?
Oh, okay, yeah. I like Seton with the soccer stuff. I'm a big Fritzy guy. I feel like everybody is always knocking Fritzy. I was listening the other day, Dan, and Fritzy must have like given you the signal he wanted to talk, and you said, "Yes, Todd." It was subtle and it was amazing. It was like it was the last thing on earth you wanted to do was go to Fritzy. So I'm going Fritzy.
Okay.
Somebody has to be Team Fritzy. I'm Team Fritzy.
All right. Well, Todd might be sweeping all 4 categories. Voting is still open, by the way. All right. I mentioned this first hour that Sean McVay feels like there could be 1 foot into coaching, 1 foot in a broadcast booth at some point here. If he looks at his team, are they going to be competing for playoff spots in a Super Bowl? But then I also thought if he's found his quarterback in Baker Mayfield, at Baker's age, Stafford may have 1 or 2 more years, if that. Is that enough if Sean McVay can find his quarterback and it happens to be Baker Mayfield right there in front of you?
Well, that's what makes tonight's game so interesting, right? I mean, that's what makes the rest of this Rams season interesting. There's still a lot of unknown as it relates to Stafford, his neck injury, next steps for him. If Baker plays really well, I do think that's part of the reasoning for McVay, whether or not he decides to come back.
Yeah, we got a bad Wi-Fi connection there. We'll see if we can get him on the phone. A couple more phone calls in here. Best and worst of the weekend. Jeff in Detroit. Hi, Jeff. What's on your mind today? Ross Tucker's back with us. We were talking about the Rams and Sean McVay, Baker Mayfield, and you said that's why that makes this game interesting tonight.
Yeah, just because I think if you are Sean McVay, who your quarterback's going to be next year and moving forward is obviously extremely important. We don't know what Matthew Stafford's going to do. I saw where McVay said he doesn't need surgery. That surprised me as a guy that's had a bruised spinal cord before in my neck. I thought he did need surgery, but I think there's still some chance where Matthew Stafford decides not to play anymore. If Baker plays really well down the stretch and McVay kind of likes him and kind of wants to work with him, I think that makes it more likely McVay continues to coach. If Baker plays really poorly and Stafford decides not to play, I mean, who's the Rams quarterback? And is McVay sticking around for that?
Yeah.
You know, this could potentially, Dan, be the other side of trading as many draft picks as they did for Ramsey and everything they've done. This is kind of the other side of it where you don't have the depth. You're not able to sustain that years down the line.
Cowboys and the Jags, and the bettors were on the Jags, and that's why I thought something's up here because I didn't know if this was a trap game for the Cowboys. They've been spending time talking about Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, that game coming up this weekend, but they couldn't stop the run. Where's the Dallas defense that we've been waiting for, or that's been there and kind of disappeared?
It's a really good question because it's interesting to me how many people are like talking about Dak Prescott after that loss. And it's like, wait, hold on a second. First of all, the overtime pick six walk-off, that hit Noah Brown in the chest. I mean, that wasn't a bad throw by Dak. They put up 34 points. Even when the Jags came all the way to take the lead, once again, Dak led the Cowboys down the field to get the go-ahead touchdown. It hasn't been the offense. I agree with you, Dan. I don't know what's happened to the defense. I know they've lost some guys, but I think people have, I don't want to say they've figured them out, but they've lost too many guys in the secondary, like the corner Anthony Brown, opposite Trayvon Diggs. And because they're a little bit undersized up front and they're built for speed and that pass rush, if you don't get them in a lot of obvious passing downs where Parsons and those guys can go nuts, you can move the ball on them. And the Jags kind of moved the ball on them at will. You know, early in the season, we were talking about the Cowboys like a top 5 defense. They've been anything but the last few weeks.
Also, the Bengals and the Buccaneers, the Bucs are up 17-0. Brady at home, trying to rebound after one of the worst games of his career. And the Bengals come to town and that second half dominated. What changed?
Couple things changed. Number one, the Bengals changed up their defense. Their D coordinator should be a head coach this offseason. Louis Anarumo, so impressed by that guy. I mean, they went from giving up 17 points, unable to stop Mike Evans in the first half, to rolling coverage to Mike Evans, totally shutting him down. And then on some level, too, the Bucs just imploded. I mean, they try a fake punt, and Giovanni Bernard is the only one that doesn't know what to fake. He's not ready for the ball. Then they fumble back-to-back. Brady fumbles. They fumble in exchange. I mean, it was like bad news Bears stuff for the Bucs in the second half. And now the Bengals, I mean, not only are the Bengals in the driver's seat to win the AFC North, they've got a very realistic chance to get the number 1 seed because they still play the Bills in a couple weeks. And I think it's a Monday night game. I mean, that's going to be an unbelievable Week 17 Monday night game with the number 1 seed in the entire AFC potentially on the line.
Yeah, you have Buffalo at 11-3, Kansas City 11-3, Cincinnati at 10-4. Jalen Hurts coming off the worst game of the season, going into the Dallas game. Handicap this matchup we're going to have on Saturday with Dallas and Philadelphia.
Well, what's so interesting about it, Dan, is there are people in Philadelphia already pointing out that the game doesn't really mean that much for the Eagles, right? I mean, they have a 3-game lead with 3 games to play. So the only way they don't get the division championship, and really even number 1 seed, is if they lose these last 3 games, which is unlikely. So there's a couple different scenarios, right? There's number 1, I think the idea of resting anybody here in Week 16 is ludicrous. But if there's things you notice on film that you really think you can exploit against the Cowboys, it's a little bit more interesting. I mean, do you show it?
Yeah.
Because there's a pretty decent chance they play against each other in the playoffs, with the Cowboys being the likely 5 seed. That's a very real scenario. So I expect the Cowboys to bounce back. Home game, I think they'll play very, very well. Although on the flip side, that was the worst the Eagles have played in a long time. 3 turnovers, several mistakes, and they still won. I think the Eagles would like nothing else but to just cement everything and beat the Cowboys Saturday and get this thing over with.
Have fun tonight. Our best to Kevin Harlan. Thank you, Ross.
Absolutely. I will give him that. Thank you, guys.
That's Ross Tucker, host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Westwood won tonight. If you're listening on radio, Rams and the Packers, you can follow him at Ross Tucker NFL and his daily 30-minute Ross Tucker Football Podcast.